welcome back to the Warriorcast. After a bit of a hiatus, we're back on video. I'm Garrett Jockno.
Along with Jake Nissy.
And welcome to the show.
Yeah.
So first things off, we're going to talk about the NFL. The regular season is winding to a close. Teams are starting to clinch playoff contention. Jake, your thoughts on the season?
Yeah, Indianapolis just clinched at 8-5. The Giants, meanwhile, kind of the opposite of that record, 5-8. Yeah. They are officially eliminated. Kansas City, if they haven't already clinched, they're 10-3. New England are 10-3. Denver and Seattle.
Well, Kansas City's going to have to wait until the Broncos.
Right, yeah.
Because they're going to have to fight for. They're going to get the wild card spot, but at the same time, that's a stacked division.
Absolutely, yeah.
Indianapolis, meanwhile, 8-5. They've already clinched their division.
Yeah, they could go 8-8 and still make it.
Exactly. They have Tennessee, Jacksonville, Houston. Houston's lost 11 straight. That conference is no good. So
New England still have Miami in their division, so they haven't clinched yet.
Exactly. Miami, but overall, I think that you're seeing somewhat of a balanced attack aside from that one division. And I think that for the most part, it's going to be the top teams competing when it comes down to it in the playoffs. You're not going to see any really bad teams making it just because even Indianapolis.
Not a great division, but they're a good team.
They're still a good team.
They are a pretty good team. You know what you're going to get. The Saints, Seattle, Denver, Kansas City, the Patriots. Maybe the Panthers. Those are really the teams that we're going to have to look out for. Those are the teams that are going to do well in the playoffs.
And I think really it's just going to come down to a certain handful of teams. I mean, the Patriots, they're going to compete until the end.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the Broncos, the Seahawks. But it's going to go to those elite squads when it all is said and done for this season.
Mm-hmm. And this year you could argue that Seattle is one of those elite squads. I think last year they might have won maybe 10 or 11 games. They could easily win 13 or 14 this year. So
they just dropped a game, but that's only their second loss of the season.
Yeah, and it was the 49ers who are also no mugs. So
yeah. All right, so on the collegiate level, the regular season is done, and teams have been accepting their bowl bids. Auburn will take on Florida State in the national championship. Your thoughts on that game?
Auburn have been a team of destiny. Some people call it luck. Some people would call it being able to close out games in the end. So they've had some crazy finishes, and they're hoping that they'll be able to stop Jameis Winston and get another win in that big game.
Yeah, right. And I mean, Florida State, if you're playing Florida State, you're really going to need to be competing at that ridiculously high level. Obviously, Auburn has that great running game. Their rushing attack is the best in the entire NCAA. But the question is whether or not they can take Florida State in the air, especially with that great defense that they have over there, and whether or not Florida State with Jameis Winston can really counter that great run game that Auburn claims.
Right, and a lot of teams pointed out how Auburn might have been lucky, but at the same time, they also played a much greater strength of schedule. Florida State did kind of silence those doubters a little bit because they played Duke over the weekend and they beat them 45-0. And Duke were a team that were getting actually a lot of praise. Their first time in a while winning 10 wins. First time in its program's history, I believe, getting 10 wins. So they were 24th in the country and they completely annihilated them. But obviously, Auburn are a much better team than Duke. So that's going to be a big test.
And Florida State has been blowing out these teams game after game. But at the same time, Auburn has really found a way to squeak out those close wins. So whether or not that's just something characteristic of Auburn and Florida State's going to play down to that level or really be halted, or whether or not they're not going to be hampered at all and they're going to it's either going to be a rout from Florida State's end or a squeaky win.
Personally, I think being able to get close wins is more important because a lot of teams can blow out bad teams, but when you're playing a really good team like Auburn or Alabama or Georgia, and you make some mistakes and you still find a way to overcome that, and you're not necessarily even playing your best football, that makes that's very encouraging, and that's
really how you get to the elite level.
Right. That's how you define champions. When they make some mistakes, or they're not in the top of their game, they're playing very good teams, do they find a way to win?
Right.
And Auburn have done that this season.
Yeah, so that'll be an exciting game to watch, and maybe not nearly as exciting, but on the local level, Rutgers will be taking on Notre Dame in the Pinstripe Bowl. Notre Dame's ranked 25th. Rutgers really doesn't even deserve to be there. You don't know what's going to happen, but also don't know whether or not Rutgers is going to come out with their brilliant selves that we've seen against teams like Arkansas this season, or if they're going to be the team that lost to Houston pretty significantly, and whether or not they're just going to completely choke now that this stage is big. So that'll be fun to watch too.
Yeah, I mean, we're 6-6, I believe, an inconsistent team, so going to be hard to really expect what you're going to get out of them, but they do have some talent, and hopefully they'll be able to end the season strong.
Right. I mean, they have good running back play from Paul James. Their quarterback situation is always shoddy, but at the same time, they're full of surprises. So don't expect too much, but don't be surprised if they pull out a nice little victory
to end the season.
Right. In the other collegiate sports, college basketball is well underway, and you're really seeing some powerhouses emerge in Arizona. You didn't see Arizona as you knew they were going to be at the top, but not at the tippy top.
Yeah, right. This is their first time, I think, in maybe 10 or 15 years that they're number one, and they're playing some really good basketball.
Right. I mean, you thought it was either going to be Duke with Jabari Parker, Kansas, they brought in Wiggins.
And both those teams were playing well, but they both also suffered a loss of their own. I think Kansas just lost to Colorado, and Duke lost to I kind of forget, but Duke suffered a bad loss as well. So those are young teams.
Right.
And they're going through stuff like that. But come tournament time, when they're really gelling, those are definitely going to be teams that are going to have to be feared.
Right, but Arizona too. I mean, they had the third recruit now, Aaron Gordon. They're going to be relevant throughout the season, and depending on whether or not he stays, they could even remain relevant in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely.
But regular basketball is where all the excitement has been, or a lack of excitement if we're talking about the Eastern Conference, particularly the New York metropolitan area. The Knicks and the Nets. Yeah. It has not been pretty.
No, the Nets are 6-14. I think the Knicks are 5-14. So they have basically I think they have less wins combined than the Celtics do, which is pretty ridiculous.
Brooklyn has 6, New York has 5, and I believe that the Celtics are at 10. So it's pretty close. And even the Celtics, they're below 500. And they're currently ranked 4th in the entire Eastern Conference.
That kind of speaks to how bad the East has been. Only Indiana, Atlanta, and Miami are at least at 500.
Yeah.
And obviously it's expected where teams possibly like Atlanta, or excuse me, not Atlanta, like the Pistons or the Wizards or young teams that are going to take some time to really come into their potential. But the Nets and Knicks were easily playoff teams last year, and many people thought they improved over the offseason, and now they're like at the bottom of the Eastern Conference.
I mean, when you and I were talking before the season started, we really saw the East as a 4-way race between Indiana, Miami, Brooklyn, and Chicago. Obviously, Derrick Rose's injury sort of derailed Chicago completely.
They'll still be a playoff team, but I don't know how high their ceiling's going to be. I've heard Luol Deng trade rumors as well.
You always hear those.
Yeah.
But from Brooklyn's point of view, this has been just about as bad as it could get.
It's a disaster.
I mean, the team is not gelling. There's been injury after injury, and now even up at the coaching level, you're seeing some serious friction between Jason Kidd, Lawrence Frank, and there's really no end in sight for when the problems are going to end.
Lawrence Frank was reassigned, meaning to doing daily reports, meaning basically that's like the first step in him being removed from the team altogether. So
I mean, he's seeking a buyout reportedly, so you never know.
I heard he was hiring lawyers, so that's already gone bad. The Nets have had some injuries, and they've won a couple of games against the Bucks among them, which not a great win, but a win is a win at this point, and they're going to look to any sort of victory to just be able to spark their season and give them something to build on.
I mean, but even with all that chemistry, even with all that talent, you can't buy chemistry, and at the same time, you certainly can't succeed when, even at the tippy top of your organization, in the coaches and the ownership, when there's just serious stress. It's really just a terrible atmosphere they have in Brooklyn, which is not what Billy King or Prokhorov desired when they moved the team.
Absolutely, but 6-14, that's 20 games played. You've still got another 3 quarters of the season left, so there's a lot of basketball left to be played, and this is easily a team that, if Darren Williams comes back strong, if Joe Johnson finds his shot a little more, Kemba Garnett and Paul Pierce can stay healthy, no one would be that surprised if they made a run.
I still think that as long as Jason Kidd is manning the reins, I don't see any
Absolutely.
I don't even know if they'll make the playoffs. I mean, they might squeak in just because the Eastern Conference is that bad. If they were in the West, it would be done already. I mean, the West has three teams that are above 500 or that are 500 or above that aren't making the playoffs.
Right.
Brooklyn might get in just because the East is that bad, but they're not going to do anything, at least from my perspective, until Jason Kidd either matures as a coach or recognizes that he can't be the guy to lead them to success when he hasn't even coached at the assistant level.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of showing how necessarily being a great player doesn't mean being a great coach.
I mean, you saw what happened with Magic.
Magic Johnson was a horrible coach. Michael Jordan is easily the worst GM in the league, and he was best player of all time. So at this point, the Nets are getting a little bit of backlash in hindsight for choosing Jason Kidd over people like Brian Shaw, who at least was an assistant for a long time.
And he's doing great things in Denver.
Right. They weren't supposed to be very good, and they're definitely competing.
They're going to be
George Karl, Lionel Hollins, all these guys are respected coaches who have gotten deep in the playoffs and been recognized as elite coaches in the NBA.
Right.
And they just pluck Jason Kidd right out of the NBA, straight from retirement, no coaching experience. And that's a major risk, and it's not paying off right now.
And I think that that's something that really came from the ownership level. I think that Prokhorov really wanted that big name guy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the owner shouldn't be the one.
Connection to the Nets too.
Right, and the owner shouldn't be the one really choosing the guys who are going to be affecting the team. Obviously, they're putting in the money, but they're not going to be the one. They're not the ones who understand the game. That's the GM, and I've said really bad things about Billy King, but at least I think that he would understand, at least to a greater extent than Prokhorov, the kind of coach that would fit the Nets system, and that coach is not Jason Kidd.
Right, they've had obviously a big vision for him, working out, winning them championships, and as of right now, I could say it doesn't look. I can't say it's not going to happen, but right now it's not going well.
Right, and New York, there's no really end in sight there either. Mari Stoudemire, you have that contract that's just killing you.
Right, 25 a year, I think.
Obviously, Melo, he's a great player. Don't get me wrong, but he's not the kind of player he has a very specific ceiling, and he's not going to bring you to a championship.
This is the best he's going to get. He's not going to make players around him better.
Exactly.
He's not going to be someone who reinvents his game and becomes a distributor.
I think that their really only chance at doing anything above getting into the playoffs this season is if they make some sort of blockbuster trade where they move Melo, because they're going to win games. I mean, the beginning of the season, obviously, Melo's disgusted. Knicks fans are disgusted. I'm disgusted, and I don't even like the Knicks. But as long as Melo's there, you're going to eventually get a grip and catch some ground. But I don't think that you're making any playoff noise as long as he's your main guy.
I mean, yeah, obviously he's a great scorer. He's actually rebounding well this year too, but not a lot of efficiency, just kind of shoots. And there are players around him that probably should be getting the ball a little bit more. Possibly J.R. Smith, Shumpert.
Shumpert actually isolates more so than Melo, according to the new statistics that are out.
And he's not on good terms with management right now, who have been looking to trade him.
Right.
But Shumpert, J.R. Smith, Chandler, if he's playing, there are guys on the team that do at least deserve some more touches than they're getting.
And I think that as long as you have Mike Woodson, you're not really going to. As your coach, you're not going to get that ball movement that successful teams like Miami or San Antonio have really mastered. So the Knicks and the Nets, there's really no end in sight to when their troubles are going to come to a close. I don't think that they're going to make any noise, but I really don't think it's going to matter because the East is pretty much a foregone conclusion. Even with Atlanta fighting, it's going to come down to Indiana or Miami, who play tonight.
Yes, and Woodson more so than Kidd, but even at this early stage in the season, we see kind of both New York coaches on the hot seat already.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And now the NBA season might be underway, but really what we're seeing the start of is something slightly more exciting than women's curling, World Cup soccer.
Yes,
take it away.
A lot more exciting than women's curling. I don't know if there is women's curling or if it's just intermixed. I'm not sure. But yes, World Cup coming to Brazil in June. And Brazil are hosting it, obviously, who, under my estimation, are one of the favorites.
Mm-hmm. And the U.S. obviously has a very difficult draw. I mean, they've got some really talented teams.
With Portugal, who are led by Cristiano Ronaldo, Germany, who are probably one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the world, and Ghana, who have eliminated them from 2 of the last 3 World Cups. Right, or two of the last World Cups, actually, I think.
But it's not going to be any walk in the park for your home country either. Obviously, England has Uruguay to compete with.
And Italy as well. So, not necessarily a group of death, not the worst possible draw, but definitely a challenging draw. Uruguay, a really good team. Italy, a good team as well. England, a good team too. So, obviously one of those teams. And Costa Rica too as well, who were, I think, came second in the U.S.'s qualifying group from CONCACAF. So, that'll be a difficult group to navigate through. Not an awful situation, but not extremely encouraging either.
Right. So that'll be something exciting to look out for. Also exciting to look out for will be the Bowls, the NFL playoffs, the NBA season, and of course the next edition of the Warriorcast, starring me, Garrett.
Jake.
Hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching.